On February 16, 1974, in the town of Fort Worth, Texas, Carla Jan Walker and Rodney McCoy had attended their high school Valentine's Day dance. But the events that took place after left one of them murdered and the other a witness, a victim, and a suspect for decades. Carla was described as being funny, sweet, and a little bit stubborn. A petite 4 foot 11 inch, 100-pound girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. The 17-year-old was beautiful, popular, and well-liked. She was one of 6 siblings. She attended Western Hills High School, where she was a cheerleader and met her boyfriend Rodney McCoy, who was in the football team. Rodney is described as being quiet yet popular. He was the starting quarterback for the Western Hills Cougars. Carla and Rodney are described as the cool kids, the it couple. He was in the football team, she was a cheerleader, both were young, good looking, she had a brand new car, life was good. Rodney and Carla were young, but by all accounts seemed very serious about their relationship and their future together. Rodney gave Carla a promise ring, which is like a pre-engagement ring. This was something to show Carla his commitment in the relationship. He was in love and he wanted the relationship to last. On the night of the dance, Rodney and Carla had planned for a romantic dinner, just the two of them. After that, they attended the Valentine's Day dance with all their peers and friends. Nothing out of the ordinary was said about this dance. They seemed to have had a good time. Some friends did say that there was a little bit of drinking, but nothing too crazy. When the dance was over, the couple decided to cruise around with another couple, friends of theirs. When asked about this, the couple said that they didn't see anything wrong with Rodney and Carla. They were all having fun just driving around until they decided to split for the night. Rodney drove their friends back to their car, but since he and Carla didn't have a set curfew and they didn't want the night to end, they decided to cruise around a little bit longer. The following is what Rodney said took place. No one else was there that can corroborate his story. Carla and Rodney drove around town for a little while until Carla needed to use the restroom. That is when they pulled into the Wrigley Bowling Alley. This was a local spot where teens would hang out. They knew the place would be open, and so they went in, used the restrooms, and then they walked back to their car together. In the car, Rodney said they were hanging out, kissing a little, doing what normal couples do. But they were not paying much attention to their surroundings. Carla was leaning against the passenger door with her purse over her head. She was using it as a type of pillow between her head and the door frame, and Rodney was on top of her. That is when, to their surprise, the passenger door was forced open, leaving Carla hanging between the edge of the seat and the door. Rodney fell over as well, making them an easy and open target for the attacker. Rodney was hit in the head with a pistol multiple times, leaving him disoriented with a lot of blood dripping from his wounds. He has said that he is not sure exactly how many times he was hit, but because of Carla's reaction, he knows it was multiple times. He heard Carla say something like, stop hitting him, I will go with you." Rodney said he did not get a good look at the attacker. He remembers seeing Carla being pulled away by the stranger and hearing her telling him to go and get her dad. Those will be the last words that he ever heard from her. Rodney has said that he must have blacked out after that, but he doesn't seem sure of how long. When he came up to, he drove down to Carla's house to alert her parents of what took place. Unfortunately, Carla's parents have both passed away, but her younger brother and older sister remember what happened at the Walker home. They said the family was gathered around enjoying different activities. I believe her family was playing games while her brother and sister were watching TV. At around 1 a.m., they heard a car pull into their driveway rather fast and heard Rodney say, "They got her, they got her." Rodney was full of blood and extremely agitated. He explained to Carla's family what happened at the bowling alley, and the police were called. But Carla's dad went straight to the bowling alley, gun in hand. There, he didn't find much. Carla was already gone. Rodney was taken to the hospital to treat his wounds and was also interviewed by police. He explained what happened at the bowling alley, but also said that the attacker not only hit him with a pistol, but also pulled the trigger 3 to 4 times, but the gun didn't fire. There is always suspicion when someone goes missing or is murdered. Police will always look at the people that are closest to the victim. This is true for any romantic partner, so by default, Rodney was looked into closer by police. You see, he wasn't just the last person that was with Carla, but also because there were inconsistencies in his story. Rodney told the police that it was one person that took Carla, one attacker. But when he went to the Walker house, they distinctly remember him screaming, They got her. They as in more than one person. Also, Rodney said that he heard 3 to 4 clicks, but the gun did not go off. There is also the time that it took him to get from the bowling alley to the Walker home. He does explain this by saying that after being hit so many times in the head, he blacked out, but isn't sure how long. What I personally find odd is that he knew that the bowling alley was open. Why did he drive to Carla's house? Why didn't he go into the bowling alley and ask to call the police or ask for help? Sadly, 4 days later, Carla was found dead in a culvert in a remote road outside of town. For those who don't know, a culvert is a tunnel made to carry water or drain water under a road. The culvert was about 30 feet long. Carla was found on her back, with slashes on her legs and arms. Her clothes were torn. It was evident that she had put up a fight against her attacker, and she was also sexually assaulted and strangled. Carla was found about 9 miles away from the bowling alley. The culvert was remote and hard to see from the road. At the time, the evidence was preserved, but they didn't know when DNA will be useful. They knew technology was advancing, but at the time, all they could do is collect as much evidence as they could and hope that someday all their hard work will pay off. Because Rodney was the only person that was with Carla, he was interviewed multiple times. He was also put under hypnosis. He was able to describe the attacker in more detail. He said he had a skinny nose and he had some type of green sleeveless jacket and a cowboy hat. He also said that he talked like a cowboy, and a sketch was made. Now, because of the cowboy description, the police looked into the people that came in with the rodeo. They pulled up criminal records, but nothing came of that. After Rodney was questioned by police at different times, it was clear to him that he was a suspect. But after the police talked to friends, family of Carla, police couldn't find a reason why Rodney would have done anything bad to her. Everyone had nothing but good things to say about the couple and about him as an individual. At the bowling alley, they also found a magazine for a Ruger pistol, which corroborates with Rodney's story. If the pistol was used to hit Rodney, the magazine would have come off, and that would be the reason why the gun did not go off. Police determined about 40 people had the same type of pistol in the area, but after interviewing all of them, most had alibis for the night Carla went missing, and nothing out of this list of people came out. Many criminals have been looked into as suspects for Carla's abduction and murder, including killer Tommy Ray Neeland. But although Neeland confessed to other murders, he never confessed to Carla's, and there was no evidence to show otherwise. 3 years after Carla's murder, Jimmy Dean Saucer walked into the police station and confessed to the killing. Of course, he was arrested, and while he gave a story, it was filled with information he could have found in the newspapers and reports. And his mother also said that Sasser had a history of getting drunk and confessing to murders. Sasser admitted that he made everything up. In the course of 46 years, the Carla's case was unsolved. Suspicion was always cast over Rodney. In 2005, Carla's dress was sent to a crime lab in hopes of finding DNA. They knew Rodney's DNA would be in the dress because he was with her that night, but they were also able to find a third unknown DNA profile. They were able to compare the incomplete DNA profile to previous suspects, including Neeland, but they did not find a match. But in 2018, new detectives were assigned to Carla's case, and they posted about the case on Facebook. They received a message from a woman stating that she knew who killed Carla. She told police that her ex-husband was the one who killed her, and that he had a box full of newspaper clippings about Carla's case, and he also lived near her at the time of her murder. His name is Steve Clare, but when police questioned him, he said that he just liked collecting items about him and the people he knew. He said this wasn't something that he found to be weird and that he knew Carla, but also provided evidence that he was living in Austin at the time of her murder. Can you imagine finding out that your ex-wife is accusing you of murder? The box, I find it is a little weird, but there is people that like collecting things and hoarding things, so I wonder what happened between those two. The DNA was taken from Steve, and it was also ruled out. After all these years, detectives went back to Rodney as a suspect. They found 3 letters that were sent to police back in February 25th, a few days after Carla was found. All the letters accused Rodney of killing Carla, and they were all signed 10100. I couldn't find any information on who wrote these letters or what the signature 10100 meant. I'm not sure if they ever found out who sent those letters. By 2020, the hopes of finding out the attacker's identity was thinning. Police had used up almost all the DNA found on Carla's clothing and were not able to find a match to the unknown attacker. But in May 2020, Ortham Labs were able to come up with a full genealogical profile and use genealogical mapping to find out a family name. The family name was McCurley, and what do you know it, they did have in their list somebody with that last name. Glenn Samuel McCurley was one of the suspects police had back in 1974 because he had a Ruger pistol. He had told police that his Ruger was stolen and also passed a polygraph test, which aren't very reliable, but it did take him out of the list back in 1974. McCurley still lived in Fort Worth, just a few miles away from the bowling alley, so police decided to pretend to conduct a welfare check on his home. And out comes this old grandpa-looking man, joking with his hands up in the air saying, "I didn't do it," or "I didn't do anything." To which, can I just point out how comfortable he was joking around with police. He had to know, he knew that he killed somebody, and that was not even in his mind at all. He thought for sure that he got away with murder. So he was just joking, like, "I didn't do anything, like, there's no way that the police are here because I murdered a girl about 40 something years ago." Police had a small chat with him and left, but later returned to do a trash run, which means that police dug through his trash to find any items that might have his DNA, and they found it in a McDonald's straw. Later, they returned to McCurley to ask him to provide a sample of his DNA. Although they had a sample already, they wanted him to be able to provide it himself. And he said, well, they did that back in the day, and you already have it. And his wife, who was there, said, no, they didn't. They didn't have DNA back then. So the cops asked him, well, what were you doing around the time of the murder? And he said, I was with my wife. She doesn't drive, so I was driving her around. To which his wife responded, no, I wasn't in town. I was visiting my dad that week. So McCurley agreed to give his DNA. And what do you know? It matched the DNA found on Carla's dress. It was actually on Carla's bra strap. And the pistol was found hidden away in his home. McCurley was interviewed again, and after an hour, he confessed to the murder of Carla Walker. He said he was drunk and looking for a victim, but he first said that he saved Carla from Rodney, who was hurting her. He said that Rodney was beating Carla in the car, so he saved her from Rodney, and to thank him and Carla had sex. He denied that he raped her, but he did confess that he strangled her and murdered her. Now, why he was so reluctant to accept that he raped her, I'm not sure. But this is something that has been seen in other cases, where not just the killer, but sometimes the killer's family refused to admit that rape was something that they did. And even though they have the evidence, it seems to be something that they just don't want to admit. Maybe it's out of embarrassment. I'm not sure. He said, quote, I just got carried away. At first, McCurley pleaded not guilty, but on day 3 of his trial, he changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. At the time of the murder, McCurley was 31 years old. And he never left town. He could have easily drove by Carla's parents' house every day. He never showed remorse and only confessed when the evidence was overwhelming. He was free for decades and had kids and grandkids who had no idea what type of a monster they had next to them. Rodney was quoted saying that he thought he would be suspect for Carla's murder until the day that he died. Luckily, the truth came out. And this didn't happen, but he did have to live all those years with a cloud of suspicion over him. Many suspect that McCurley had other victims. In his interrogation, he described leaving Carla next to a building. And if you guys want to hear the interrogation, they have a video on YouTube. I suggest you guys go and take a look at it, because it's very eerie for him to describe leaving her next to a building. The fact that the culvert was well hidden led police in 1974 to think that this was planned. There had also been other women found in culverts. For example, Christy Towers of 1983 and Angela Ewart of 1984. McCurley did have other victims that we know for sure. The murder of Carla left her family searching for answers for decades. Her parents endured a great suffering and never found out who hurt their daughter. Rodney's life was forever changed, and people around the town felt unsaved and traumatized. McCurley is appealing his conviction. But if it wasn't for the DNA that was preserved all these years, the cops that gathered the information at the crime scene, and the people at Ortham Labs that took it upon themselves to help solve this case, this man would have kept living as if he didn't do anything. And her family would have never found the answers to all the questions they had for so many years. And that is all I know about this case. Thank you so much for listening, and please come back next week for a new case.